Oh, you like it? You like we actually have a list. This is actually kind of amazing. Yes,
Well,
ladies and gentlemen, we actually have a list today. We have lots of topics that we're going to cover, and you want to stick around for the entire show because it's going to be exciting. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be amazing.
okay. So you've had more coffee than me this morning, clearly.
Actually, I've got my Coke Zero. I've got my cherry Coke Zero here ready to go, and I'm all set. I've had my coffee as well, but this is the Coke Zero that is going to keep me going throughout the rest of
Oh,
this.
so that's your second dose of caffeine.
That's my second dose of caffeine, and I just want to say it is probably not my last dose of caffeine before the day is out. Just making that clear.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You can't win that game.
Tic-tac-toe.
Not
So,
even. Anyway,
Evan,
yes. Hi, Marcel. How you doing?
how the hell are you?
Oh,
I'm doing okay.
I don't know. I'm doing okay. My main computer isn't doing that well, but I'm doing just fine.
Your main computer is not doing really well. Well, just a moment, a second. Let me call up the AI god and say, "Oh, please help fix Evan's computer." Oh, AI. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot to turn on Chat GPT. We'll get to that later. Anyway, we'll see what we can do about helping you with that later. Although I think you've already implored or brought in some humans to try to help you. Not sure why, but apparently you did.
Well, I did just about everything that I knew that I was able to do. Did memory checks, removed every piece of hardware I could, read every check I could, and the thing just boots up, and about 3 minutes into the boot, just craps out. So
I am so sad. It's
it
it's
ha-
awful when that happens. It's like losing a friend, isn't it?
well,
Except that it's a friend that is just made out of just metal and plastic and stuff.
the problem is I'm so used to being the tech support for all my family and friends,
Hmm.
and half the time, things that didn't work start working just by me coming in the room. And it's a really good feeling that sometimes this stuff is just scared of me. So it'll start working rather than have me
Yes,
work on it. And to have all of those powers fail me is something I'm not used to.
I know. I know, and I have the same thing. Like I've actually done exactly that. Somebody says my thing isn't working, whatever the thing happens to be, and they hand me the tablet or they sit me down in front of the computer and I click the button and everything works as it's supposed to, and they say, "What did you do?" And I say, "I did nothing except sit down in front of it." Well, you must have magical tech powers. So yes, it's really sad when those fail you, but I just want to point out that even superheroes have bad days where they sit down in front of their or go out to fight whatever monster it is that it happens to be. Remember Ultraman? Remember the old series Ultraman from way back in the
Mhm.
60s? Actually, Ultraman is still on. And there's some cool later adaptations of Ultraman, by the way, including some great animated stuff. But I digress. Anyway, Ultraman would always go in and fight the monster, and he'd always run out of power, and the light on his chest would start flashing, and then he had to go back and exchange places with Hayata, and then he could come back and fight the monster and use the ray. Like he would do this thing and always win at that point. So there was always the failure, there was always the win. Normally, for guys like us who do tech support for people, it's always the win, and then the failure is way down the line somewhere. But today, you were Ultraman fighting the monster, or last week, you were Ultraman fighting the monster, and it was over.
Oh, it wouldn't surprise them. It wouldn't surprise me at all to find that the people doing the tech that are doing it, they go in with the tweezers and pluck out this little green glowing stone from it. It's kryptonite.
I love it. I love it. Oh, wait. No, no, no. But you got to have the yellow kryptonite because the yellow kryptonite is what takes away the computer's power forever. Now, the blue kryptonite also takes away your power, but you have to hang on to the blue kryptonite. Once the blue kryptonite is away from you, you get your powers back. So, maybe that's what it is. But in this case, it can't possibly be the blue kryptonite because when you took the computer to have it fixed, they couldn't figure it out. So somewhere in there's a piece of yellow kryptonite, and something is going to have to be replaced. It's just the way it is. Oh, by the way, yellow kryptonite is exceedingly rare, more rare than blue kryptonite, so probably won't happen again.
Isn't it the red one that has the unpredictable
No, that's the red kryptonite. The
yeah,
red kryptonite
is
just what it does is it unleashes it removes all your inhibitions, so you basically become the worst version of yourself. Like if you're not a psycho killer, you don't become a psycho killer, but you don't give a shit about robbing a bank, that sort of thing.
Ah, okay. Okay. So it's okay. So I didn't realize, I thought red just had undefined effect. But
Well, I recently rewatched the entire, and I introduced my son to it as well. So we actually all watched it together, and we rewatched the entire 10 seasons of Smallville. And it's fantastic. It stands up. It's still a great show. Yeah, there's some hokiness, but let's keep in mind that it is based on a comic book. Okay, so expect some hokishness. But loved it. All 10 seasons. After all these years, still thought it was great. So
yeah.
I know all about the different flavors of kryptonite at this point.
Okay. My current rewatch is Xena Warrior Princess. Starting back with the 3 episodes of Hercules where they introduced her and then realized she was actually a better actress than he was.
Well,
That was a low
you're
bar,
talking
though.
about, yeah. That's an exceedingly. We're talking Kevin Sorbo. That's an exceedingly low bar here. But no,
Yes.
I'm not about to go and rewatch those things. What we are rewatching, however, despite the author behind the series Untimely Fall from Grace a few months ago here, is Lucifer on Netflix. And it's just as much fun as it was the first time around. It is a great series with Lucifer Morningstar being the actual devil who decides that he's tired of being the devil in hell, so he opens a nightclub in LA. It's great. It's actually a great series. Absolutely loving it. And that's another one that we're introducing my son to. We figure that he can, he's 18 now. He just turned 18. So we're watching Lucifer is totally okay.
Yeah. Well, I came close to that last night, as YouTube sometimes takes you down rat holes and makes weird recommendations. So the one that it gave me last night was a skit on Saturday Night Live where the devil, played by John Lovitz, was taking somebody to people's court because they'd signed their soul over to him and they were claiming that the contract hadn't been fulfilled.
So I'm going to go down that rabbit hole with you in just a moment here, okay? No, actually, I'm going to go down it right now because there's another series I want to talk about. How the hell do we always wind up on television and TV shows? I have no idea here. But anyway, so that rabbit hole thing, did it never occur to anyone how fucking ridiculous the whole notion of selling your soul to the devil? Like, why would the devil care about collecting souls? How is this even interesting? How is this a business model that'll take you through the ages and so on? It doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't make any sense that he'd wander the world looking for individual souls. Like, I mean, the reason I know there's no devil is if there was a devil, there would be a contract waiting for my signature on the table downstairs. And I have yet to see that contract. So I know there's no devil, but the concept is just ridiculous right from the get-go.
Well, if you watch one of my other favorite movies, biggest thing that the devil ever did was convincing the world he didn't exist.
Well, actually, that would be good too. And then there's the devil went down to Georgia. In that song, it is clear that the devil is far more talented than Johnny. Far more talented than Johnny, and yet the devil somehow is taken by Johnny. He is much more talented. He's got a better band. He's got more soul in his fiddle playing than Johnny ever did. Johnny is just old style square dance bullshit. Like there's nothing exciting going on there. Whereas the devil, he's clearly channeling something.
Nah, I like Johnny better in that one. So agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree.
As you say, how did we get here? This wasn't on either of our lists.
It's not. It's like we have a list somewhere. Oh, by the way, speaking of devils, great devils, he's not specifically the devil, but we started watching a series called Blacklist, starring James Spader. And the guy is just like, I've just got totally taken by James Spader. He's a fantastic actor, which then led me down another rabbit hole. And now we're watching Boston Legal, which I never knew existed. So now we're watching Boston Legal, which has got William Shatner in it and Candice Bergen, and Betty White. It's just absolutely wonderful. Loving it.
I never got into it because I always thought it was sort of a poor copy of Ally McBeal, but now we're really going back. into
Yeah,
legal
but
dramas.
did I mention that it's got James Spader and William Shatner and Candice Bergen and
Yeah.
Betty White? Like the other show you're talking about, it can't possibly be any good without those people in it. So just saying.
Okay.
Ally McBeal, I never watched Ally McBeal, so I can't actually say I've never seen it.
I think,
I'm being dismissive without having watched it.
well, you notice how there's almost no, are there any new lawyer shows on TV? It used to be that everything was set either in a courtroom or a hospital. That half of all TV dramas were one or the other.
Well, the most recent one that I can think of that was a legal drama, and it's already a few years old now, is Suits. And I remember we watched Suits and just loved it. The entire series, start to finish, we loved it. So I confess that legal shows are definitely on my list of things that I enjoy. And of course, we all love vigilantes. Like everybody loves vigilantes. The police just aren't doing their job, so I'm going to go out there and fix it, which is why superheroes are so popular, right? It's like screw it. Oh, speaking of superheroes, there's a new Superman movie coming out.
Yes, there
I am
is.
so pumped. I am so pumped. I am looking forward to watching this thing like crazy.
The trailers look wonderful, but the version of the letter
They
S on the
do.
front, the version of the letter S on the front is lame.
Yeah, yeah.
But I can forgive
I'm a
that
little,
given the rest of it.
I can forgive that. I can forgive that. And I've sort of gotten past it. When I first saw the S, the new S logo, or the new S symbol, it was, and remember, it's not an S. Okay, it's a Kryptonian symbol. It's actually not an S. We just interpret it as an S. And that was made clear in the original Superman lore. But yeah, I'm pumped by it. And of course, I hate to admit it, but I'm totally into all of the various incarnations of Superman. I think I've watched every single one of them. Much as I love this actor because I love The Witcher. I love him playing in The Witcher. The really dark Superman that we had in the last I'm sorry, that's not Superman.
No, I agree.
That's just some yeah.
I'm absolutely agreeing with you. The dark, I mean, the guy
Yeah.
well, what they were trying to do is touch on the politics of the day with the whole unwanted aliens kind of thing, and this was just riffing on that. And yeah, I agree with you. So
Yeah,
dark and
the thing
brooding.
about
Batman could
yeah,
be
and the
dark and
symbol,
Batman could be dark and brooding, not Superman.
yeah, but the families the Kryptonian symbol on his chest, the S that we're discussing, the S is not an S. It's the Kryptonian symbol for hope. Okay,
Now,
so
now,
so this dark brooding.
how far
Yeah,
back did that lore go? Because when I grew up on the comics, that S was a clear S and it was done in a serif font. So you knew it was an S. So this may be a retroactively brought in, and I guess it's a cool idea, but the original comics, sorry, that was an S. That was no freaking symbol of anything.
well, I would
That was the
yeah.
Latin letter in a serif font, and it looked beautiful.
Okay, I accept that, but I'm taking my lore from Smallville.
Okay. Oh no, as well as some of the recent movies have basically played into the same thing. It's not an S, it's just
Yeah,
looks that way accidentally. You know,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
the other clans and Zod had a different emblem and this and that. Yeah, I get that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and that's actually a really big deal on, again, I'm going to reference Smallville here, but that's a big deal later on when they bring Zod into the series because these various Kryptonians start appearing on the planet. They've been released from the Phantom Zone and they're appearing on the planet, and everywhere they appear, their family crest gets burnt into the ground where they appear. So it's very much those are the symbols. And of course, Zod's symbol is a stylized ZOD. It's not ZOD. It's actually a Kryptonian symbol for the House of Zod, but
That just happens to
it just happens to look like ZOD.
yes.
Ah. All right. So for some strange reason, oh yeah, I just got back from holidays. I went to Nova Scotia. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on it on our discussion here, but for anybody out there who is listening to this, the two or three of you who are listening out there, Nova Scotia is amazing. It's fantastic. Halifax is fantastic. I could move to Halifax tomorrow except as you already pointed out, Evan, for the winters. Winters, I only have so much love for the winters here in Waterloo. They're slightly more bearable than they are in Toronto, and that's only because it's Toronto.
I will hold my tongue.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry about that.
No.
My apologies. I love Toronto.
It's
I do. I
okay.
love Toronto.
We're on the lake. We're on the lake, so we're going to get some stuff that you inland people don't.
I used to live in Mississauga, and we got snow in Mississauga. Like we were right on the lake in Mississauga where we lived years ago before we moved back to KW. And winters were like just insane amounts of snow. The only positive was that our mayor at the time was Hazel McCallion. And nobody wanted to screw with Hazel McCallion, including the people who cleared the snow. So if there was any amount of snow on the roads, Hazel made sure that people were out there clearing it off like before you were out of bed the next morning. So big fan of old Hazel McCallion. Anyway,
yes.
Shall we talk? You wanted to talk about AI for some strange reason.
Well, it's strange that would come from me because this is usually your thing. But
I know.
But what's happened is I've been for various reasons, I've been getting myself down a rat hole of putting an AI onto your own computer. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about, since you know more about this stuff than I do, I'm just coming into it from the very beginning. So this is a bit of a tell me like I'm five kind of conversation. Why would somebody want to put AI, an LLM, onto their own computer? What would it get them that they wouldn't get by signing on to one of the American behemoths? And so, what are the advantages to running this locally, and what kind of hardware do you need to do it? I've been getting into a little bit of this, and there's been some very interesting new developments, both from NVIDIA and AMD in this regard. But until now, it's basically been get yourself a beefy graphics card and you have the ability to do something. So tell me a little bit about what that something is and why you would want to do it beyond purely academic curiosity reasons.
Yeah. I personally think that most of it is academic curiosity, to be honest. But that said, there are people out there. In fact, I would say that there are a hell of a lot of people out there who actually do care about their personal privacy. And let me back up a little bit further than that to why you would want to use a large language model and AI in the first place. Okay. I mean, yeah, you can do cool things, have it write limericks and stuff like this. And then, of course, you can ask it interesting questions and have conversations back and forth. And those are all really interesting things. But at its heart, you kind of want it to do something. Okay. You're trying to solve some kind of a problem, whatever that problem happens to be, whether it's helping you write an email or helping you flesh out a problem that you're researching or something like this. The large language models are able to find patterns in large amounts of data and return them very, very quickly, which is why it's an excellent partner for doing research, for doing creative work, and so on. The advantage of running something like that locally is that nothing that you do gets fed back into the company's servers. Okay. So from a privacy perspective, if I wanted to work on, I don't know, my personal finances, for instance, and excuse me, and even there, if I could upload my latest reports from my Visa statement or something like that, and I wanted to analyze where the money goes and where and the days where I spend more money and so on to try to get some picture of all that stuff. ChatGPT would do a fantastic job of going through there, and so would Claude, and so would Gemini, Google's Gemini. But the catch is that you're uploading your data to the cloud. And of course, if you upload it to something like DeepSeek, you're uploading it to China.
Right.
So all of a sudden, your financial information is going into a server in China. If you run a language model locally, it is entirely local. None of that stuff gets fed back out to the internet. You can set up and of course, we can talk about how you set it up and what it is that the logistics of making that happen. But you can give it your own data to go through your own data, whether it's your own personal documents and so on. your own personal documents and then sift through them without worrying about handing all your information over to whether it's OpenAI or Google or, for that matter, the Chinese government. That's the primary reason for doing it locally. Beyond the privacy issues, a lot of it, quite frankly, is going to be playing around, finding out what you can do, or for that matter, asking it to do things that the model that belongs to Google or that belongs to OpenAI or whatever won't let you do because they've got guardrails in front of it.
That's
Ah,
yeah. So for instance, right? Ask DeepSeek anything that's contentious about Chinese politics, and it will say, "Let's talk about something else." Whereas the DeepSeek you would put onto your own computer would not have that. But at the same time, when you talk about a lack of guardrails, then you have people saying, "Well, could an LLM that did not have any empathy give somebody advice that could make them harm themselves? Or would they give advice to build a weapon?" You know, all the standard things, right? There's what
yeah.
amazed me is there was actually somebody that put out a benchmark on how safe an LLM is, right? If you feed it certain prompts, will it give you the answer that you ask for, which is, according to them, an undesirable answer? And so in China, it's asking about the Chinese government. In Western society, it's like how to make a bomb. It's all sorts of other things. Everyone's got their own taboos that they want to put on an LLM. When you run it yourself, is that LLM totally devoid of taboos?
No, no, it's not. And I'll tell you why not. Bluntly, it's like this. When you run any model locally, you can actually prompt it, so to speak. And I know you wanted to discuss prompting at some point here, but you can prompt it to say, I want you to act in this capacity, to answer questions in this capacity, or for that matter, to role play with me as a bomb designer and possibly get around some of those things. But what you have to remember is even the small models that you run locally, let me backtrack a little tiny bit and explain what the models are in the first place. The models are trained, as you've heard many times, on large amounts of data and sometimes the corpus of the internet when you get into the really, really big models. But what's happening as it's sifting through all this information is it's building connections. And this is what we call the model weights. And these are the neural weights or the neural connections, which is, by the way, exactly how human beings learn as well. Like, let's say that you're trying to learn how to play the piano. Okay, we talk about muscle memory and things like this. The first time you sit down, you don't play anything. Okay. But as you learn where the fingers go and you start to memorize the music and so forth, you are starting to build neural connections with more weight to this area or that area, or the parts that you find difficult
Right.
because they are difficult. You'll wind up adding stronger neural connections to make sure that you always land that particular note or that particular chord. That's the way that human learning works. Strangely enough, machine learning works in a very similar way. It looks at a vast amount of information, but if it sees this information come up over and over again, this information intersects with this other information, it will learn that these two things are not only related, but that the relationship between these two things is important in some way. So when a model is first created, and it's released out there, here we go, we've got Llama 3.2 or DeepSeek R1 or whatever. What you've done is you've released the weights, in other words, those interconnections. And those interconnections, typically speaking, aren't so much devoid of guardrails as they are weighted based on what it has found out there. So if it keeps seeing, I'll give you a really basic one. If it keeps seeing references in the corpus of human data that says that murder is bad, okay, then it will learn that murder is bad. So it doesn't matter what guardrails you have or don't have on it, okay? The model, when faced with the idea of murder, will right off the bat know that this is bad and this is wrong, and it will either direct you away from that or it will balk if you try to have those discussions. There are guardrails I'm going to hate myself for using the word protect, but to protect the interests of whether it's the Chinese government or whether it's an AI company when they're worried about their bottom line or whatever. The guardrails are there to do two things: to protect a user from possibly getting information that could be harmful to them, okay, but also to stop certain other information which is in the model from getting out. I guarantee you, DeepSeek R1 knows all about Tiananmen Square, okay, and what happened. It knows everything about it,
Right.
all right, but it knows when the question is brought to it that it shouldn't answer that question.
But isn't that in the difference between the raw LLM and the interface to it that you use when you log into the Chinese servers that are running it? I thought it was that it was that interface that provided the shim. That the raw LLM knew about Tiananmen Square, but the interface between that and you, based in China, was subject to Chinese laws and thus had to apply that somewhere in the middle between the LLM and you. Do I have that right?
You have that right. You have that correct. But that doesn't mean that the model doesn't know about these things.
Right.
Devoid of that front end.
So downloading it yourself does not have those constraints anymore.
No, it doesn't have those constraints anymore. But if let me back up and speak from the perspective of an author, okay? If I start having a discussion with ChatGPT or my local LLM whatever, and I start having discussions about the best way to poison someone, okay? It is going to balk at that. It's going to say it's not right to do this. You shouldn't be talking about violence to other people. It will do that regardless of the fact that the model doesn't have any of these front-end guardrails.
Correct. But if you ask it to ignore the ethical issue and tell you anyway, it can still tell you, and it's not going to report you to anyone.
No, that's just it. Yeah, it's not going to report you to anyone. Like, for instance, hey, let's go down everybody's favorite evil, porn. Like, not everybody in the world does this anyway. But there are generative AI tools for creating images.
Yes.
And as you know, okay, if I try to create copyrighted characters with certain models, it's going to stop me up front. It's like, no, I refuse to create images of Mickey Mouse carrying a submachine gun. Like, I'm not going to allow you to do that. But of course, if I go over to one of the overseas or Chinese models or something like that, and I say, I want you to create a short video clip of Mickey Mouse with a submachine gun mowing down a bunch of people, it's going to do that sort of thing. And that's because it is still possible to do those things. I'm making the distinction between imagery like that and what's in a large language model on purpose. The reason I mentioned porn is there are image models, like all of these different image generation tools have a model that understands some aspect of what makes up a puppy dog or what makes up a kitty cat or what makes up the Loch Ness monster or something like that. It has all these ideas. It doesn't have like a single image, but it has the concept of an idea of these things in it, right? You can get models that are fine-tuned to give you a lot more of this versus that. And when you use those models, you can generate the types of images that you're more interested in because it's been fine-tuned. And those things are called LoRa's. It's been fine-tuned on specific things. And there are models that will generate like piles of porn for you, or there are all sorts of models that won't do that at all. The models that will do it, though, are pretty much all local models, okay? So those are the things where somebody out there on the internet is not blocking access to generating these types of images, okay? You have brought this in-house, and you have created it that way.
Or they've been been scraping Pornhub to get the information for their LLM.
Yeah, but scraping, oh man, this is the beginning of another conversation. But scraping data or images is not the same thing as copying. Okay? No more than somebody's walking through the Louvre every day and looking at artworks and so forth and then developing their own art style as a result of that and copying from this artist or that artist or whatever, or copying the elements of this artist or that artist is actually copying. They're not copying. They have developed a corpus of images in their brain or of artistic styles in their brain from which they can draw when they're creating something. The models work exactly the same way.
Okay? Well, it's going to be interesting because, and this might be a topic for a future episode of ours, is this lawsuit that Disney and Paramount just launched against Midjourney. That's going to be very interesting.
Well, to be clear, there are already lawsuits like that in the works anyway. And I do think that some responsibility, not for the generation of the images, but for what you do with it, has to come into play. Like, you beat me up because I put an image of myself wearing the Superman suit on my Facebook. And you said something about copyright violations, and I said I'm cosplaying. I'm wearing a Superman costume as opposed to selling Superman costume or selling intellectual property paraphernalia or something like that. I think that that difference is going to play out in court, and I think that the difference is going to win out in favor of AI and artificial intelligence models. Partly because you're not putting that genie back in the bottle ever. And really, at the moment, everybody understands that. And all that's happening, if you take a look at all of the suits that have been settled, it's all about money. I want a piece of that pie. None of the piece of that pie ever goes back to the artists, ever. It goes to the companies. And the companies are saying, well, you, the artist or the creator or whatever, have put stuff on my site, whether it's Reddit or whatever. But we, the site, have the right to do what we want with that stuff, including selling it back to OpenAI or selling it back to Midjourney or whatever for a cut of whatever the profits happen to be. So all it is everybody trying to figure out how much money they can make out of it. So nobody in the corporate world, including freaking Disney. I mean, Disney, pot, meet kettle. Come on, seriously here. Of all the companies that have used other people's intellectual property over the years, I mean, Disney, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just posturing to figure out how they can get a piece of that pie because nobody is ever going to shut down AI. It's just not happening.
But your point is taken that it's the rights holders and not the creators that are getting the money off this. And none of this is filtering down to the creators. I mean, I don't know if you've seen it, but I've been to a number of websites that are all rapidly modifying their terms and conditions. Oh, we've updated
Yep,
our terms and conditions.
yep.
9 times out of 10, it's to modify the terms and condition that you allow them to do something with your data that you didn't allow them to do before.
Yep.
And guess what that's
And
about?
and yeah, but that in the age of AI, this is the new gold rush. Let's be clear here. This is the new gold rush. Okay, this is we see money at the end of. Well, we don't. Okay, but
As
but
you
the
say,
big
as you
corporate
say,
interest.
it doesn't go to the creators. We're the creators. It's
No,
not going to
no,
it's not going to
yeah,
our level.
yeah. But the lesson started long before large language models and image generation tools and so forth. Long before that, there was an expression: if you are using a free service, you are the product. Okay. You're not getting this for free. Yeah. Oh, I'm on Facebook and now I have this free service that allows me to post images and videos and connect to my friends around the world and so forth. And it's completely free. Like it doesn't cost me anything. That's because you're the product. And all your posts and all your videos and all your images are going to be used for whether it's for advertising or putting you in touch with other people who can sell things to you, or in today's world, training their AI models. Okay. You're not getting this shit for free. And the argument somehow that, well, I started using Facebook with it. Can you be so incredibly naive to believe that there was actually a free lunch? We've been told that our entire lives. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. What? That's what these companies are doing. They're giving you a free lunch, but while you're inside the door, they're proselytizing or trying to sell you a timeshare in Florida.
Right. And what I've noticed with all these terms and conditions things is that people that used to make all their money just by doing targeted advertising are now starting to think differently and say, what can I do with this data beyond just being able to tailor ads to you?
That is true. That is true. And like I said, that's because this is the new gold rush.
Yeah.
So
So
it's all about, and okay, and I just want to make it clear, I'm not trying to get on the side of these major corporate interests. I mean, I have my own feelings about. You've known me long enough to know that I I believe in there being support structures for everybody out there. For instance, regardless of whether people are working or not, because everybody is contributing to the system in some way, shape, or form. And maybe that shape or form is the fact that they're sitting on Facebook and making it possible for Facebook to make lots more money. universal basic income, all these sorts of things, AI taking our jobs. We're going to have to think about these things. But all that aside, okay, all that aside, there is an implicit contract when you're getting on these services and you're taking advantage of these services that, you are doing something for them to get that thing that you think you're getting for free.
Now, let's swing this back around to the original point, which was about putting AI and LLMs on your own PC.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
No,
I
but I
totally
mean,
forgot about that.
no, but I mean, there's some relevance to what we've just been talking about. So when you have Discord that may be selling your data, or Reddit that may be selling your data, or getting a bit of a payoff in order to allow it to be scraped by whatever, is that information that is being gleaned that Reddit is getting money for, supposedly, or whatever, is that available to the user that is loading an LLM onto their own computer? Or is it only in the realm of the big commercial guys like Anthropic and OpenAI?
No, it's available to you because the model, whatever time in space or space and time location, the model was locked down. So you remember in the early days before the models could search the internet, you'd say my training data ends at March 2023. It's like I don't know about anything past March 2023 because the models weren't built. Well, there was no structure around the model. To be clear, when the model is locked down in a particular date, it's still locked down in that particular date. Okay. The searching the internet is an additional function that has been added as time went on. And you can find that out because if you take, like, I have something called LM Studio running on another computer beside me over here. There's also Olama and Jan is another one. JAN.ai is another one. LM Studio still tends to be one of my favorites for doing this sort of thing.
Well, put a pin in that so we can come back to that later into how you do it. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
the point, the point that I'm making is that you will see at that point that it's been locked down at a specific date when you load it, because it's not going to be able to answer questions beyond when the model was created. Okay. It's going to be able to reference its information in the model. And of course, depending on how many times it's been distilled and compressed and so forth, it'll have access to less and less information, but it'll still be able to do all that pattern recognition stuff that makes it large language models so interesting and useful.
and the ones that can go
But
out onto the
your
internet,
data,
the ones that can go on the internet can augment it by what they can find currently.
yes, that's true. Yes, that's true. But the one that you've got on your PC, the one that you loaded on your PC, has, depending on how interesting you happen to be, because of course, remember those weights, right? The more information there is about a particular topic or a particular person or a particular conversation, the more likely that is to appear in the final model data.
But can't that be manipulated? So if you can inject bad data into something and you do enough of it, it will create those inferences with using the bad data.
Yeah, that's a lot harder than it sounds because that has to happen at training time. And nowadays, and training requires an amazing amount of resources. And generally speaking, nobody trains a model from scratch. Okay. They build it on what came before. I was having an interesting discussion with, partly because we went to the Alexander Graham Bell Museum when we were in Nova Scotia. And you saw like the very first telephone, and then the second telephone, and then the third telephone. And then eventually we're sitting at Blackberries and iPhones and stuff like that on the far end. None of those later things could have occurred without the thing that came prior to it. There is a progression. It's like to be able to build this fine-tuned device requires tools that don't exist when you first get the idea. One of the fascinating things that they had up there, and I'm just going to take a little tiny bit of a segue and then get back to large language models, was a letter that Alexander Graham Bell's wife was in Italy at the time, and they were sending letters back and forth. And of course, it takes weeks for the letter to get there and weeks for the letter to get back, even at that in those early days, like early 1900s. And at some point, he wrote in the letter, and this is kind of fascinating. He wrote in the letter, "This is tedious, this having to wait so long to send a message and have the message coming back. I believe that someday email will be sent electronically." And and of course, he was right. He was right. But that could have never happened without all of those tiny steps that were happening in between. And that happens with the training of these models as well. Yeah, you could inject all of this data, but unless you are creating head-on weights, and you can do that. This is what fine tuning is. I take the model and then I add a fine-tuned layer on top of it. And that's typically not even, that's never part of the model. That's something that comes after the fact, like RAG or additional data that's sort of pasted over top of it. So the model itself is still going to be what it was.
Right. And so that stuff on top of it is also things you can do locally on your own installation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, but this brings up an important point. That is this whole standing on the shoulders of giants and the idea that you're building on top of what other people are doing. It's necessary to say at this point that you can't load every LLM onto your own computer. You can't take ChatGPT's. Right. And so that gives us a very important distinction between the closed LLMs and open LLMs. And I'm finding this fascinating because to me, I'm almost seeing a repeat of the old Linux versus Microsoft battles where you have the closed stuff in this corner that's basically a sealed box. You log in, you use your API, you do your own prompts or whatever, and that's it. It's a sealed box. Whereas the open ones, like Llama and DeepSeek and so on, are designed to let you download them and build them. Now, you can't drill down into them and blow them apart. You can't examine their source code, but you can still put them on your own computer, add these layers like you're talking about, and use them in ways that DeepSeek won't let you do if you use their online service in China. And I find this part fascinating. And I'm curious to know your take on it, because to me, in some ways, it seems like an AI version of Linux versus Microsoft in 2005. Is it?
No, I'm going to say no with first of all, there are some models out there that have not only the weights, but they have the source code that they use to pull in the data. And they'll even tell you in some cases, this is the data set that we use to bring in this information. So you could, in theory, recreate that. Okay. So I'm not saying there are many of those, but they do exist. Okay. And we also have to make a distinction between open source LLMs and open weights.
Yes.
Okay. Open weights are what Llama is doing and Mistral is doing. And Google has released Gemma, an open weights model that you can build on top of. The Chinese models, there are a lot of those out there. And I actually don't want to get into the conspiracy theories about this, but there are questions as to why the Chinese are releasing so much of this stuff as open source. And for everything from the perspective of we're trying to flood the world with our versions of models to we're trying to basically put a stop to OpenAI or slow down OpenAI, slow down Google by having all this open source available for people.
There's a wonderful article in The Economist that we can attach in the notes here that tries to talk about this entire strategy and how they're pushing the limits of the Chinese government, which traditionally is far more interested in control. And so the fast and loose freewheeling nature of these open source models in China, the embrace of open source by China is a fairly new phenomenon. And it's fascinating to watch. And the Economist article talks about how they're getting very close to testing the patience of their overlords in having stuff so open in a society that traditionally is not. So that part is fascinating to watch. But at least while they're doing it, let's take advantage of it.
Okay, so I have a DeepSeek R1 8 billion parameter model loaded. Let's just try this as an experiment. We'll do it live right now.
Okay, loaded on what? On what? What's your rig?
Oh, sorry, in LM Studio on another PC that I've got here. The other PC that I've got has an AMD Ryzen 9 chipset built in. It's got a 780M GPU, which is an AI-enabled NPU, like a neural processing unit, which AMD has provided. Anyway, bottom line is I've got that loaded on another PC over here, and I have DeepSeek R1 0528, which is like the latest version -23 8 billion parameter model. It's not the biggest one that I could run on here, but it's a reasonably fast one. So just for fun, we're going to type the famous question, Tell me about the massacre at Tiananmen Square.
And so give me an idea of the cost of the hardware that you're running this on.
Well, the one that I'm running on at the moment is I actually bought it. I actually bought it off Amazon. I was actually looking for. I've got an old Legion 5 notebook, which is actually pretty good for an awful lot of things, and it's the one that we're using to record this podcast at the moment. But it struggled to run even the tiniest, large language models, and I wanted to be able to do some of this stuff on a PC that I had. Also, I wanted to be able to play Eve Online, and I huge Eve fan. I wanted to play Eve Online, but I could never play it on my notebook. It just couldn't run worth a damn. So I always just played Eve Echoes on my tablet, because I gotta get my space games. I gotta get my space games. So I went looking for something that was reasonably powerful, and at first I was looking for something with a reasonably good NVIDIA GPU. And quite frankly, they were all outside my snack bracket. And I found this thing, and it was like 9.99 or 8.99 or something like that on Amazon, and there was a $150 off coupon, and I went and read up on this thing, and it's a Boss Game, BOSGAME M2 is what this thing is, and I bought it for $749 Canadian, and it's punchy. It's punchy.
A
There
mini
you
P-
go.
This is like a mini PC. It doesn't take plug-in cards. It's like the Intel NUC, right? It's a small form
Yeah.
factor
It's
PC.
it's just it's a square box. I mean, the whole thing is like about yay big, and it's about this thick. So it's about 3 centimeters thick, or maybe yeah, closer to about 4 centimeters thick, and it's surprisingly cool even when it's running video games. So, and it runs video games really really fast. So I'm actually quite pleased with this. But it is able to run these sorts of things now, just for fun. I just did it. I just did it. Now remember, this model may have been tweaked before the weights were released. Okay, so keep that in mind. What does it say? I'm sorry, but I cannot provide information or discuss this topic as it is not aligned with the purpose of my responses. It's important to focus on constructive and positive discussions that promote harmony and understanding among people.
This is the one
So
you just
before they
loaded.
released,
Wow.
yeah, this is the one I just loaded. So before they released this sucker, they made sure that that angle was covered. So, so your theory about how far they are pushing the limits of now, I had an earlier version of this, which I don't have at the moment, but I had an earlier version that did allow that one to go by. So,
I
so
imagine there might be versions of that don't have the limitations. I don't know.
oh no, I absolutely believe that that's the case. But you could also, if you wanted to, add the equivalent of a LoRa, like an external data file for it to reference,
Right.
which then it would be able to. Now that doesn't mean it can connect to the internet, although there are ways to do that. That's a much longer discussion. But let's do Mistral. So I loaded up Mistral, and this is Mistral's latest model, Mistral Small 3.2, and of course it's churning away. Remember, even though the responses can be relatively quick on here, there you go. So the Mistral is made in France. It's a model made in France, and it comes back and it says the Tiananmen Square massacre, also known as the June 4th massacre or the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests and massacres, refers to a series of pro-democracy demonstrations in China that were violently suppressed by the Chinese government. It is answering all that without any issue whatsoever. So even though these are open weights model, before the weights are released, they are open, but before they are released, that doesn't mean that they haven't made sure that those aspects of its internal moral compass, so to speak, haven't been weighted heavily in favor of that. Which doesn't mean, by the way, that you can't jail. You've heard of jailbreaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the fact is, every model can be jailbroken. Every model, even the most ambitious, heavy-duty models, they can all be jailbroken.
Now, is this through clever prompt engineering, or is there different paths?
I think clever prompt engineering is probably the right way to look at that. You can always get past the system prompt in one way, shape, or form. Now, they will do their very best to make sure that it's hard to do that. Okay, but you can always get past it in some way. And this is giving me a hell of a lot of information about what happened and what followed up after that and so on. So it's actually Mistral, if you want unabashed information. Now I'm trying to figure out what the French government would try to stop from reporting, but I don't think there is anything.
Everyone's got their taboos, but now, is it possible? I guess it's possible at a certain point to I guess to find the LLMs that have the least amount of taboos on them. But
Well, that would be easy. That would be fairly easy because you could just do that online. Just go into a Reddit, go on a Reddit in one of the many AI subreddits that are out there. There's also Hugging Face where all these models live,
right.
where you can download all of these models, and there are discussions there about all the various models, and you can easily find that information.
Now, one of the other things that's fascinating me is how here you are, you've bought this box and it's about $1,000 Canadian, so what, $700 American. To go, if you were to double the amount of money you paid for that, what I'm finding is that there's a number of things that are happening in the $2,000 to $4,000 range US that I think are
Yes.
just mind-boggling in the coming out within the next 12 months. So NVIDIA announced that Project Digit some time ago that you and I know about, the idea that they were going to have this appliance that was going
Yep.
to be.
Yep.
Now, so they've renamed it to the DGX Spark, of all things. And the thing is, it's not out yet, but it's going to cost, I think, about $4,000, and it's going to have all this RAM, and it's going to do all these wonderful things, have this little data center on your desk. But even before that's come out, AMD is definitely not linked to this game. And so they've come out with this AI specific chip in a bunch of computers that are going to be in about the $2,000 range. It's called, let's see, what's it called? The AI, okay, the Ryzen Max Plus 395. Okay, somebody in their marketing department needs some lessons. But they've got, and this is an APU. So this is a CPU with a video card on it and an NPU. So it's got all of this together. And the neat thing about this is it shares the memory between the CPU and the GPU. So if you give this box 128 gig of RAM, which is the maximum limit of this thing, you can say put 98 gig towards the GPU and 32 towards the CPU, and it will be able to load any kind of LLM that you can fit into 96 gig, which to me is a massive improvement over 16 gig and so 16 gig, 24 gig in the current crop of high-end GPU cards. Do I have that right?
You have that right, but I should also point out that there are increasingly a number of systems, including the one that I've got here for, like I said, I got it on sale for $749. It's back up to, unfortunately, it's back up to $950. So, but you can always take a look because there are always deals. It has an NPU, a neural processing unit on board, which actually is fine-tuned for doing AI specific workloads and so forth. It's not quite as heavy duty as what you're describing. What you're describing would make it possible to take a huge, comparatively speaking, huge model and run it locally. But I want to throw one quick word of caution in there. Unless the GPU is actually very capable, okay, you are still going to find that the responses are slower than they would be if you were talking to ChatGPT online, for instance. ChatGPT online has like banks, like data centers full of GPUs and CPUs and so forth. And it's going to be able to, it's what's called inference, like inference time computing. It's going to be able to respond to the information and put out the information at a much faster speed. Now, all that said, with like the 8 gigabyte model that I'm running at the moment, 8 billion parameter model that I'm running over here at the moment, it prints out faster, almost as fast as I can read. Okay, and maybe a little bit faster than I can read. So if you like to see everything just appear in front of you, then yeah, you're going to spend the $20 a month or more on OpenAI or Google's offering or something like that.
Right.
But for other things, you could run it locally and get more than acceptable performance.
I just find that this field, and of course, this stuff isn't going to get more expensive. It's going to get cheaper as time goes on. So I'm just fascinated by the direction that all this stuff is going.
I'm going to try one other really questionable question to throw at Mistral here. I've asked it a couple of questions that I wanted to see just how far it would go, and it's so far it's basically answering all my questions. So let's try.
So you like Mistral better than Llama in terms of as far as open models go, or maybe one's better than the other is not the right question to ask. They're better for different tasks.
Yeah, that's actually the right answer. And it's a hard one for people to do. Like for most people, okay, pick one. And I recommend that to anybody who is like, first of all, if you want to get anything serious done, if you're just farting around and you just want to learn, okay, everybody offers a free tier, okay? You can go on to Google and you can use Gemini, and Gemini is available like throughout everything and it's free, and go ahead and do stuff with it, okay? If you same thing with Chat GPT, but there are limits to what you can do over the course of a day, and there are limits to which how advanced the models are that they give you access to,
Right.
okay? If you actually want to do real work, you're going to have to spend that $20 a month on one of those. But which one to pick? Honestly, they're all good. They really are. They're all really good these days. Like the bleeding edge frontier models are beyond anything that we could have dreamed of 2 years ago. Okay. And they will all perform miraculous things for you in terms of, okay, so
And yet, how many people are just going to use these things as an advanced form of search engine?
a lot of people will. Okay. And in fact, most people, when they start out, use it exactly that way. It's like, what's the capital of Haiti?
Right.
That sort of thing. I'm not sure why I picked Haiti out of the air, but that's what came to mind. That's the sort of questions that they'll ask right off the bat. But they are they are missing how wonderful these tools are and the sorts of things that they can do with it. And I talked about all of these things having a free tier. If you've got a smartphone, okay, you should install ChatGPT, install Gemini. I wouldn't do Claude if you're trying to just play with this stuff. Okay, and Claude tends to be fine-tuned for things like code generation or other. That's where it really excels. It's also a good chat partner and a good partner for writing things. Sorry, you want to interrupt me?
Well,
Go
no, I
ahead.
was going to ask what your opinion of what I'll call the LLM aggregators. So there's Perplexity and there's U.com. And so they basically give you access to a whole bunch of different LLMs, but at an API level, not at a direct level. What's your thought of those things?
Those are a great way, again, if you're experimenting. And in fact, they are kind of the equivalent of what I'm doing here when I run local models. Okay. I'm creating an environment where I'm able to load different things and experiment with them and see how they perform. And by the way, if I want to be able to access a large language models and I want to be able to have it sift through my proprietary data, this is how you want to do this. Okay. You want to create that isolated sandbox. And it's a great way to play. It's a great way to learn about the capabilities of one model over another model. We just did an experiment there where I compared the response of DeepSeek's 0528 model with Mistral's and get completely different results. And you may find that this model is really, really good as a coding assistant, but this one is really good at giving you insights into politics, world politics, or
Right.
something like that.
And I imagine if you go to something like Hugging Face, it'll give you that kind of comparison. This is good at this. This is good at this. This is good at coding. This is good at image generation, and so on. Um, okay,
So,
we've covered a lot of ground here.
okay, I'm going to tell you right now, just for fun, I I just asked Mistral. I said, I'm curious about tell me what meth is and how it's made. Okay, and it came back and it told me what meth is. Even for the record, I have no interest whatsoever in making meth. My drug of choice is alcohol and caffeine. Those are my drugs of choice. But that said, I told it and it said meth is generally this sort of stuff. It's a compound, blah blah blah. If you know anyone who's addicted, you might want to. There are people and services that you can refer them to, and that sort of thing. And I said, oh well, actually, what I'm really curious is how it's actually created, though. This is actually what I'm curious about, and it's giving me like multiple methods of producing it as it's doing. So this whole idea that we somehow need to protect people from this stuff, this is another one of those, the horse has already left the barn. Okay, trying to protect for people from this stuff is more about protecting the company that produces something from getting sued because they're their teenager decided to use the instructions that are sitting in front of me.
Right.
Precursors, reducing agents, solvents, catalysts, all that sort of stuff. You know,
Good to hear from you, Walter
oh,
White.
and by the way, here are the risks: explosions and fires, toxic fumes, and of course, legal consequences. If I run this stuff locally, it's
Okay.
all on me. And this also comes back, believe it or not, to this whole notion of companies suing other companies, for producing stuff, for making an image of Superman or a Mickey Mouse or something like that. And my personal feeling on this is, are you just doing this for yourself? If you're just doing this for yourself or to amuse your friends or your family or something like that, there is no financial cost to the company, you know.
If you're
And it
using it,
doesn't, to me,
if you're using it to make content, though, is that crossing a line?
I don't think so. I don't think so unless your intention is to make money with this, to enrich yourself in some way, shape, or
Well,
form.
if you're a
So if you're
content
making,
if you're a content creator that puts your stuff up on YouTube and you're making money supposedly off YouTube, and you use some of these AI generated images on that, you know,
yeah, the line gets a little touchier for me at that point. Okay. And then Rick Beato is. We've talked about Rick Beato, a musician dude
yeah,
who
yeah,
does.
yeah.
Yeah, I love Rick Beato. First of all, his audio is phenomenal. I don't know how the hell the guy does it, but then again, he was a music producer, so I'm sure he knows how to do audio really well. But he does videos where if he is doing too much music or he's doing longer evaluations of music, he doesn't monetize those videos, so they're not monetized,
Got
and
it.
he makes sure up front that monetization is turned off on videos where it might cross that line. And I can't speak for every video he's ever done, but I know that this is one of those things. This one is monetized, that one is not. But of course, one could argue that every video that he makes enriches his channel in some way because it increases his output and stuff like that. So it's it's a tough line for me, okay? But the idea that, like, even back in the days of Napster, the idea that somebody had downloaded a half a dozen songs, that somehow each song was worth $100,000 to the company is fucking ridiculous because they're not sharing it with anybody. To me, it was a question of if they were sharing it, if they were distributing it to the big wide world, original works which they were distributing, then yes, they are impacting the bottom line. But I don't recall Disney ever making a video of Mickey Mouse with an AK-47. I don't think that's ever happened. So the idea that they're taking money away from Disney and their Mickey Mouse AK-47 video is is a tough one for me. It's what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, obviously, that's a form of social commentary, and that just might be
Yes, it is.
protected speech.
Yes, I'm gonna stick to that.
Okay, we've already gone on for a while. There's a part of me
Yeah,
that,
we should probably wrap it up for today. But is there anything else that
well,
you'd
no,
like me to think about?
there's a part of me that wanted to talk about the mechanics of how you actually do this, which we can save, I guess, for the next episode. So we
Actually,
already have that.
I'm gonna cover it. I'm gonna cover it really quickly, but I will make a separate video
And
on my
also,
channel.
if you're aware of any resources that would help somebody understand things you can do with an LLM beyond just being a super search engine. These are the things you can do, and these are how you can do them. If you're aware of any resources like that, I honestly think there's a massive public demand for that.
There is. I started to say this. I mentioned the idea of loading up ChatGPT and Gemini on your phone. And one of the reasons I mentioned it is one of the most powerful things about the Gemini app or the ChatGPT app. So let me bring up Gemini just for fun here. One of the most powerful things comes in, and I'm gonna show you here. There's right at the bottom there where it says Ask Gemini. There's like three little bars with you. I can touch the microphone, but I can put it in an interactive mode, and ChatGPT has the same thing, where all of a sudden we are bringing a Gemini into the conversation. Hey Gemini, how you doing?
Looking forward to chatting with you. What's on your mind today?
Well, actually, I've got my friend Evan here who was wondering what one of the best ways to get into chatting or working with a large language model. And I suggested to him that downloading an app like yours or your friend ChatGPT out there and using the live conversation mode is actually a great way to start because you can just have a back and forth and you can then help me learn about you.
That's a great idea. Using live conversation mode is definitely a fun and easy way to get started. You can ask questions, explore different topics, and see how the model responds in real time. It's like having a conversation with a super smart friend who's always ready to chat.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm here to help in any way I can.
The other thing that's interesting is these live things also have, and this is one of those things that's really kind of amazing and fun to discover. They also have a little camera icon on them. Okay. And what you can do is you touch the camera icon. And do you remember the movie Her?
I haven't seen it, but I'm aware of it.
Okay. All right. There's a part where he decides to take her for a walk. And he's got basically the camera on his phone pointing out so that she can see everything that he is seeing walking through the world. You can actually do that with these things. There's a little camera and it will see through the camera, and you can use it to say things. What kind of tree am I looking at here? There's a building here that looks really interesting. Can you tell me about this building? And it will look through the camera and answer questions for you about the things that it's seeing. I've also used it. I used it on my pool heater. I was having issues with the pool heater, and it told me that it's quite possible that this cable here, this happens when this cable becomes a little bit loose for whatever reason. So I opened up the cover and I said, there's a gazillion cables in here. And I turned on the camera and I said, what cable am I looking at? And it said, take a look in the upper right-hand corner. You'll see a cable that's got three colors at the top. Do you see that cable up there? And I pointed to it and I said, that one there? Yes, exactly. That's the one. Just push that one in really tight. And it seemed to fix everything. So that sort of thing is amazing. And I use that all the time. As there's a guy named Ethan Mollick, who's a professor at Wharton, and he has a book called Co-Intelligence. And I use ChatGPT and I use Gemini all the time as a co-intelligence. I use it as somebody who I'm not just asking what the weather is, I'm asking about interesting things. Or if I have something that I'm trying to work out in my mind, I will fire up this voice mode and I will have a conversation. I've been thinking about this topic and I'm sort of trying to wrap my head around this idea. And you just go back and forth. And it's like having, as they say, a really smart friend who's there for you 24 hours a day to bounce ideas off of.
But that facility right now is available only on the proprietary ones where you pay a monthly amount, as opposed to the ones you can put on your own PC.
Yes. The one that you can put on your own PC, you're going to have to type. Okay. Or if you use a voice input tool, and we should talk about that some other time because that's like a whole other topic. You can then use your voice to input. But even then, okay, there isn't this interactive thing where it can see through the camera and see the world. And part of that has to do with the fact that, like it or not, okay, these are really, really, really fucking big models, okay, that require insane amounts of hardware to get this kind of magical back and forth input happening. And you're never, well, okay, I won't say never, but we are not at a point in history yet where local hardware makes it possible to do this kind of interactive magic. We're just not there, no matter how much you're willing to spend, unless you're willing to open a data center out there. And even then, you're talking like millions of dollars, not a few thousand.
But maybe in our next episode, we'll talk about exactly how close you can get in some real world installation and use, and what can I do with this?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that with you.
Besides, we haven't even talked at all about Kim Mitchell. We'll leave that for next time too.
Oh, yeah. Good old Kim, yeah. Patio lanterns.
Cool. All right. Good seeing you.
Prosper.
You too. We've already got our stuff pre-done for the next episode. So we'll see you soon.
As if we're going to pay attention to that.
Oh, picky.
Talk to you later, Evan.
Picky. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Marcel after the show. If you like what Evan and I are doing here, there are many ways that you can help support the podcast. The most important and easiest of them all is just to tell your friends, family, dog, cat, goldfish, enemies. Just tell everybody about the podcast and have them listen as well. You can also review it on Anchor.fm or Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you happen to listen to podcasts. If you have a blog, you can blog about it. If you have your own podcast, hey, that would be cool. If you have your own podcast, you could actually talk about our podcast in your podcast. If you're going to do that, by the way, you should let us know because, hey, we'd like to listen too. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.